All right, guys, what's going on? It's Jack, and welcome back to another video. And in this one, I wanted to basically talk about something that was talked about in last night's podcast. And I just kind of wanted to make a shorter video of it and kind of bring you guys in the conversation because I understand that not everybody can make the podcast, especially since I do them late at night on weekends as well, especially now. And last night was actually the time when I had two co-hosts, which was awesome. Special thanks to RMD and Laura. And it's always good to get those perspectives. And I wanted to bring you guys in on it as well in this one, in terms of this specific subject in this shorter commentary style video that I wanted to make. As well as to tell you the gameplay that you see in the background is not mine. It's actually gameplay from a person who has truly accomplished one of the greatest gaming accomplishments in the history of gaming. Ninja Gaiden 2, vanilla Ninja Gaiden 2, as in the Xbox 360 Ninja Gaiden 2, the original, was one of the hardest games ever back in the day when it came out, which I believe was in 2008. And playing that game on the hardest difficulty was very difficult. The director himself said that only 1,000 at most around the world are going to be able to beat that game on Master Ninja. But this guy, not only did he go through the entire game without losing a life, but he also did it in this particular gameplay, or a piece of this particular gameplay. He did it without getting hit once. And I also think he did it live. So, and the video's on there. I'll leave a link in the description to the video, so that way the entirety of it, like the playthrough of it, which is like 8 hours or so, which is very, very, very impressive. And for those of you guys that have played Ninja Gaiden 2 on any difficulty, I think you guys have a very good idea from a first-hand experience of just how difficult what this man accomplished about 3 or so years ago, according to YouTube, is. And I just kind of wanted to show that as well. Plus, it was the gameplay that was in the background of the podcast. And since we're talking about something similar but yet smaller, it made sense to include that as well. And plus, it's just amazing to watch and to see such a thing. But anyway, I wanted to discuss this because it's very important. So we are at an age now to where obviously every single generation of gamers have these games that have come out that are absolutely legendary, and remasters of games are absolutely nostalgic, right? And there are remastered games that continue to come out over time, right? Granted, we don't get that many of them because obviously it's kind of like music, you know? It's you constantly need to have new stuff being created, right? But you can't mistake the fact that a lot of the new stuff that is created, the foundation of those things kind of revolve around the games that we've had in previous generations, right? We've gotten our inspiration in terms of what's being developed today. It's being inspired by games of the past. And there are remasters that are coming out from the past, specifically partially because of that reason. And then there's also the nostalgia, but it also gives the new generation of players a chance to get firsthand experience as to why these old games that people like myself grew up in, like let's say from the 90s or the 2000s, that basically were legendary games in their own right, and getting those games remastered or brought back with today's technology and today's frame rate and all that kind of stuff is really spectacular. Because when you look at a game like, let's say, Mario Odyssey, right? I mean, Mario Odyssey, if you think about it, is Mario 64 and the OG Mario games kind of rolled into one, and as well as a few other things that they've implemented over the years, mixed into one great package. I think this is part of the reason why games like Mario and Zelda, to name a few, always thrive, because they managed to do this correctly. So, games that end up getting remastered are extremely important, regardless of what genre they're in. I think they play a much better role than what meets the eye, which is one of the reasons why I'm kind of making this video, and one of the reasons why it was a main subject in the podcast last night. And man, those nearly 3 hours went by really quick. So now, one thing I want to pass off to you guys is a question, because I'm very curious as to what the other people that watch my content think about this as well. And that is, if you could choose, first of all, what's the best remastered game you've ever played, or the one that mattered most to you? I want to know. And at the same time, if you could choose a game from the past that you absolutely loved and adored and played the living hell out of, that you would love to be brought back in today's day and age in full remastered form with all the bells and whistles, kind of like what they did with the Spyro trilogy and the Crash trilogy, and what they are seemingly doing with Resident Evil 4 and yada yada yada, like that, right? If you could pick a game from the past, I don't care what console generation it is, I don't care what game it is, from what console, it doesn't matter. I want to know what game that would be, because there are a lot of games out there that have put their mark over time in the history of gaming, right? So since they've put their mark over time in the history of gaming, they are very relevant. Like, for instance, like when you look at games like a few games that I just mentioned off the top of my head that I grew up with playing that I wouldn't mind seeing a remastered, are games like, let's say, and including games that I didn't even play, like or played very little, like Parasite Eve. I played Siphon Filter 1. That would be a nice little franchise, including franchises that just have never been seen for many decades, like for like 2 decades at least. You guys remember Brute Force from Xbox, the original Xbox? I mean, that was a cool concept back in the day. It wasn't the best game in the world, but the cool concept was you can co-op with 3 other players, and if you can switch between, you know, your characters at any given time or whatnot or something like that. And I mean, it was badass. I mean, granted, it was limited to System Link because it was on the original Xbox, but still, the concept of such a thing was awesome. Like Freedom Fighters even was a great game, and we haven't seen anything like that since, at least from what I can remember. Obviously, there were other games like Legacy of Kain, Soul Reaver, Parasite Eve. So just to name a few, man, just to name a few. And obviously, like Metroid Prime just got remastered recently, and I don't see people complaining about that. Dead Space just got remastered. I think these games they have a place. I think all the previous generation of games, from like, especially like from the 90s and early 2000s, or even to the late 2000s, have a place in today's era of gaming, and they need to come out a little bit more often and consistently than what we're getting them now. Don't get me wrong. For the remasters that we do get, I'm glad that we got them. Like, I'm glad we got the Crash trilogy. I'm glad we got Spyro Reignited, Crash Team Racing. I'm glad we're getting Resident Evil 4. I'm glad we got Dead Space, just to name a few, right? But there are a plethora of other games out there that deserve the same treatment, and that's why I made this video, because I want you guys to take me on a trip through the comments section, if you will. Like, take me through a trip on memory lane by telling me what game for you, not for many others, like specifically for you, or games that you would love, and you know, and especially if you know that others would love as well, if you think that, you know, you can put both on, like what you would personally like to see as well as what you think would also be extremely popular to be remastered in today's day and age with all the bells and whistles that today's technology is capable of, regardless of whatever platform you're playing on. You know, like when you look at what Nintendo did with Metroid Dread, it was basically Super Metroid, but with today's bells and whistles. And to my knowledge, it was a success. And again, there's reason why certain franchises of certain games end up being as successful as they are. And that is because they have that something from the past that's thrown into the mix correctly. You know, they have that formula, they have that ingredient, you know, the recipe, so to speak, that makes that game as successful as it is. There are certain games of the past as well as certain games of today that gamers will never ever get tired of, and they'll always appreciate. And I think that's part of the reason why. So so if you think about it, getting remasters of games is more than just making it look prettier, right? There's more to it than that. And that's why some of these games that get remastered also have additional content. Like, I think Dead Space, also had a few changes here and there and additional content, which only made it better. So with that being said, we're getting close to time here. I genuinely want to know of what you would like to see remastered. It doesn't matter what genre of game it is. It doesn't matter from what generation. It doesn't have to be limited to just single player. It could be multiplayer, anything. I literally do not care of what game it is. Take me on a trip to memory lane. Bring me back to that game that you're specifically thinking of, or those games, because obviously I can't think of every single game. But then all of a sudden, if I were having a conversation either on stream or with my real life friends in real life, and all of a sudden they bring up this game and I'll be like, oh yeah, I remember that game, that'd be badass. So bring me back, let me know. So anyway, with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this video. On weekends, on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, I will be having the podcast going on with at least one of my co-hosts, if not both of them, and I'll have a maximum of 4, whatnot, and I can switch people out, of course. And some of you guys that know me and we keep in touch on Twitter, you guys are more than welcome to join in at any given time. Whenever I have those, we can make it happen on the Discord and everything like that. And I'm also, if you guys have noticed, I've also been putting up some rather diverse content on here. I've been doing movie commentaries. I've obviously been doing the podcast and stuff like that. So it's stuff that I've always kind of wanted to try, and it would make sense to just make a different channel or whatnot. But for now, I just want to kind of just get the wheels turning by doing, as opposed to saying, oh yeah, I'll eventually just make a channel and start from there. It's like, no, I've already got a channel. And it's small enough to where I could still do all sorts of different things. Like at this point, the biggest thing for me is to do things for fun and to try things that I've always wanted to try, as opposed to just focusing on one thing for the sake of growth. You know what I mean? It's more about the fun factor at this point. So, and at the same time, it gives me the chance to kind of know you guys beyond Call of Duty or beyond a one type of genre of gaming. You know what I mean? So anyway, let everything be known down in the comment section if you'd be so kind. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope to see some of you in the chat on the podcasts over weekends. But yeah, thank you very much, guys, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. See ya.